We may or may not be doing it, so it's a topic that I think, as a materials writer, which is what I spend most of my time doing, it's something I'm constantly trying to get more in the materials and encourage teachers to implement into their teaching. So, a little cartoon there. I'm not being serious there. I don't expect you to do exactly as I say. Be a critical thinker. If you do something different from what I say, I will respect you as a rule breaker. But this is what we're going to talk about in our very short 30 minutes. It's such a big topic. 30 minutes is all we have. The importance of critical thinking. We're going to define it. We're going to think about the challenges that we have as teachers trying to implement this. We're going to look at a variety of different critical thinking tasks, try to identify what critical thinking skill a particular task has, and we'll end with a few classroom applications, okay? I was also thinking, this is my 32nd year in this field. You were asking me, and you said many, and I was like, well, how many? This is actually on my 32nd year as an ELT person. So I started when I was 5. No, it's I've been in this field my whole life. I absolutely love it. I started out as a teacher for a long time in Asia and have transitioned more into training and materials writing. Okay, so the importance of critical thinking. I'm going to start with a quote here by Mr. Barack Obama. He says, "Don't simply measure whether students can fill in a bubble on a test, but whether they possess 21st century skills like problem solving and critical thinking." What do you think? Do you agree with Mr. Obama? Yeah? I certainly do. He's talking a bit about assessment here and saying we have to move beyond multiple choice tests if we're going to test the whole student. That's only part of maybe what is important in the testing. And so it's very difficult to test critical thinking with multiple choice tests. So, I'm going to give you a little quiz. Right now, fake news is something that, certainly in the United States, I hear it almost every day. With the internet, with the ability to share through social media, maybe forgetting the original source of a photograph or a story. It's not always easy to know if what you're seeing or reading is true or accurate. We were always taught if it's just because it's written down does not make it necessarily true. So, what do you think about this photo? Do you think it's a real photo or a fake photo? Just a guess. You think it's fake? I have 6 photos. Let's see how many you can get correct. This is fake. Does it look real? Yeah, except maybe the shark's a little big, but yeah, possible. You might have seen this and said, you know, if you see it, there's no reason to question it. Let's try another one. That one's real. Does it look real? It's a little, we call this an optical illusion. The water is so clear in the shadow there, it makes it look like it's floating. Does it look real? Does look real. Do you think it is real? Yeah, it is fake. I don't know why someone would create this photo, but somebody did. I don't know why. But somebody with Photoshop, they create a photo for whatever reason they want. And once it's spread around, then we often don't even know if it's real or fake. Sharks in the water, in a shopping mall that was flooded. Sharknado? Let's hope it's fake. It is fake. How many say real? How many say fake? The reals have it. Very good. Last one. The monster cat. This one's fake. That's a pretty big cat. That's a pretty big cat. But again, why does somebody create these photos? Well, that's another question. So, the importance of critical thinking. This company, a learning company called MindEdge, they said the inability to tell the difference between true and false information online is a problem. A couple of reasons. 50% of millennials get their news pretty much only from social media. That's where they get their news, social media. That's it. Not from newspapers, perhaps not from respected magazines. And more than a third of these people have accidentally shared false information online. A story or a photo. We share things all the time. We're always share. Have you ever shared anything that you later found out was false? Has that happened to you? It's happened to me. And then it's very embarrassing. Somebody calls you out and said, check your sources. I'm like, oh, sorry. And then it's like, you're kind of embarrassed in front of all your friends online. But it happens very, very often. So we have to be very careful of this. So in this climate, I think the idea of critical thinking is more important than it ever has been. Okay, now we haven't really defined what critical thinking is. We might feel we have a sense of it. We might know that it's probably important. But what really is it? So I'm not going to tell you what I think just yet. We're going to do a quick little activity. You should have a piece of paper in your bag, a big piece of paper, a big white piece of paper like this. Do you have that? If you don't have that, some of you have pad. You could use that too, a smaller piece. So let me explain what we're going to do before we do it. So listen carefully to my instructions. When you think of critical thinking, hear the two words, critical thinking. What do you think of? What word comes to your mind when you hear the two words critical thinking? Maybe it's a verb, maybe it's a noun, maybe it's an adjective, an adverb, could be any word. What word comes to your mind? So think about that first. This is what we're going to do. We're going to write that word on a piece of paper. Then we're going to make a snowball with that piece of paper. Like maybe you have a word like this. After you write this, do this. Make a snowball. And if you've never seen snow, this is your chance. So think of the word. Go ahead, write it down now, and then make a snowball. Just one word is enough. Don't write it this big. Write a big word so you can read it easily. It's okay if you've already written it. Okay, have you finished? You all have one word? Okay, let me explain what we'll do. Don't do it yet. When I say 3, 2, 1, you're going to throw it in the air. Not yet. I have to go through these instructions. After you throw it in the air, pick up a different one from the floor. So throw it up. Don't throw it at me, unless you're really angry. Don't throw it at the back of someone's head. Just throw it in the air and find another one. Open it up. Read the word. Think about it. And then add another word. Maybe the same word, but maybe try to think of a different word from the first word you wrote. Okay? So you all have your snowball? 3, 2, 1, throw. Woo, beautiful. Snowing in Ho Chi Minh City. All right. Try to find a different one. Can you hand me that water? Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So what are some of the words that you heard? Are you able to shout them out so I can hear them? Question, experience. Examine. Practical. Analyzing. Critical. Okay, do you agree with the words? Okay. Do they give a full definition of critical thinking? No, not a full definition, but it's a way to get some ideas. So this idea, have you ever done this? It's called a snowball activity, if you're curious. Okay, now, here are 4 definitions of critical thinking. Do any of the words on your paper show up in these definitions? The art of analyzing and evaluating, I heard those. Thinking with a view to improving it, reflecting on the information received, moving away from surface memorization toward deeper levels of understanding and learning. So reading between the lines, digging deeper when we read. Reasoned, purposive, and reflective, again, reflective thinking, used to make decisions, solve problems, and master concepts. The 4th definition, the act of reassessing or challenging your thinking so that you can think accurately and efficiently. Do you have a favorite of these 4? Or do you think they're all pretty good? You like the green one? What's the correct answer? What's the definition of critical thinking? All of them. Yeah, I would say all of them. I think if you put all this together, we have a start of what critical thinking is. It may not even be enough. So another way of thinking about critical thinking is we can break it down into different types of thinking. First, systematic thinking. This would be organizing your ideas into logical steps. So then they're not random. They don't have to be linear. They don't have to be first to last, but something that makes sense, some logic to your thinking. Thinking systematically would be one aspect. Abstract thinking. This is thinking beyond what your 5 senses tell you. Maybe beyond what you see. Beyond what you feel, something even deeper. Creative thinking, this is what I'm going to talk about in my workshop this afternoon. I'm going to talk about more of creative thinking. We could consider this thinking outside the box. And I think this is a very important part of critical thinking, is thinking creatively as well. And communicative thinking, this would be if we, when we say exactly what we mean. We're very clear in what we're saying in our word choices so that the listener understands exactly your meaning. Okay. Some of the challenges we might face. We might agree that, yeah, there's importance, but it's not always easy to get critical thinking into your lessons. Some of the challenges that I've heard from teachers would be identifying good examples and resources, trying to find them. And this can be a challenge for me. You know, if maybe I can think of one, but I want to find very good examples, really up-to-date books that really illustrate this as a 21st century skill. So that can be hard. If you create your own lessons, which I'm sure many of you do, you write lesson plans, you might want or need to put critical thinking into the materials. Maybe you have a curriculum, you have a book, and that's great. Maybe the book doesn't have critical thinking in it. You have to create it yourself if you feel it's important, and that can be a challenge. Finding time to cover it in class. I know we're all very busy. We have a lot we need to achieve in our lessons. Time is limited. It's one more thing to teach, and we don't want to take away time from something else that's equally important. Textbook may or may not include it. Textbook that you're using now, does it have critical thinking in it? Raise your hand if it has critical thinking. That maybe the textbooks you're using. I know a lot of you teach young learners. Should we be teaching critical thinking to younger learners? I think so. Yeah. So this is something publishers are reacting to, but it takes time. We just did the second edition of Skillful. The first edition had a little bit of critical thinking, and when we talked to teachers, they said more critical thinking. So now we have much, much more in the second edition. So this is a change that does take time. And the last one is a little bit frustrating sometimes. The education system may not encourage critical thinking, or they may actively discourage it. If you have critical thinkers, it can be very powerful. It means you're challenging things from above, and not everybody welcomes challenges. It could be on an administrative level in the school. It could be on the ministry level. But this is what I'm hearing from teachers. They don't really want their teachers that kind of power. So that can be a bit frustrating if you feel it's important and you're trying to encourage it, and the education system may not include it on the exams. So then you can get resistance from the students because if it's not on the exam, then I don't want to learn it. I need to pass the exam. So there's a lot of issues there that can make progress a bit slow. Okay, Bloom's taxonomy. This has been around since 1956, even before me. This is a taxonomy that came about by an educational psychologist named Benjamin Bloom in the mid-50s, where he organized higher level thinking skills into a taxonomy. So the ones on the bottom are lower order, and the ones on the top are higher order. And so this is still very influential and useful today. But what I find is much of our teaching stops at about the understanding level, or it can stop. Understanding would be where we focus on comprehension. We read a text or listen to a listening passage, and we check their understanding of it. They get all the right answers and we're happy, but it doesn't really involve too much critical thinking. And so I like to see people push up the taxonomy into these areas more and more. And this is something I hope to see more and more of. Now, as a materials writer, and for you as a teacher, when you are looking at a textbook, let me make it a little bit bigger. The ones in the middle here, applying, analyzing, and evaluating, to me, those are the key areas. And the verbs there are actually very helpful. So if you see verbs like this in your textbook, or similar verbs, then that can give you an idea, okay, this is a critical thinking question. Maybe you saw those but didn't consider whether or not it was really critical thinking. So useful verbs: compare, contrast, discriminate, dramatize, interpret, sketch, defend, evaluate, support, appraise, argue. These might be some of the verbs you wrote on your piece of paper, perhaps similar to these. So if your book has it, great, but not every book does. Here's an example from the second edition of Skillful Thinking, or Skillful, where we now have a whole page of critical thinking, because this is what teachers ask for. So the one here is evaluating evidence. So we read about what it is. This would be after a reading passage. We do some exercises. We go back to the reading with a more critical eye with this specific skill. Great, but not every has a whole page that you can put critical thinking in. Some books might look like this. This is also from Skillful, but a lower level. So here we have critical thinking, but we don't really tell you what it is, what kind of critical thinking task it is. But all of these are critical thinking. And so it might take a little brain work on your part to look at the question and see what are they really asking here. So this particular reading was about time management, how to manage your time well. The first question says, which tips are helpful, which are not? So that's not a comprehension question. That's a personal question. What do you think? So this would get into comparing and contrasting the tips, and you deciding, evaluating even, which to you are helpful or not helpful, and why. Other ones, we could identify them. These are not in the student book, but in the teacher's book. So I always encourage teachers, have a look at the teacher's book, because there is this kind of information in there that can be very, very useful. Okay, here's another example. This is an infographic that is the first thing the students see in a book. The topic is food. It has some information here about habits, eating habits. On the right, it has some graphs, and on the left, it has some discussion questions. So the graphic, it's an interview of a group of people, and based on the responses, this is what we got, and some questions for the students. How often do you eat out? Where do you like to eat out? What do you like to have when you eat out? Now, are these critical thinking questions? What do you like to eat? Is that critical thinking? No. It's not. Is it a bad question? No. It's fine. This is introducing students, so we don't have to have critical thinking in every task. It depends what your objective is. But maybe the students do this very quickly, and you think, okay, I want to ask a fourth question. That does get into critical thinking. This is where you, as a teacher, hopefully you have the power to do that. So you might think, okay, what could I do here? Do you think your diet is healthy? Why or why not? That's a critical thinking question. You're reflecting on your own. Why or why not? Giving reasons, supporting your reasons. So you can often come up with your own ideas here. What are the pros and cons of eating fast food? What restaurant that you know offers the best value and why? This one, what is the source of this information? You'll notice that there is no source. Now, we had a source, but the designers of the book took it out and put it in the teacher's book. And we were like, no, 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 we want the source on the page. So this might be something, but we could use this. Now, it has answers. What do you order when you eat out? But who are we asking? It doesn't say. Are they Americans? Is it an international group? Are they teenagers? Are they adults? We don't know. So there's room for improvement on this page, in my opinion. And finally, a task rather than a question. Plan an affordable but healthy menu for your school cafeteria. So hopefully, this is what I always encourage teachers to do. Don't just teach what's on the page. Have a critical eye and improve it, make it more localized, personalized for your students. Okay, I'll leave you with 4 classroom tips of ways to try to get a little bit more critical thinking into your teaching. One is having students work collaboratively. Groups, projects, all of these kind of larger group activities are very, very good for developing the real world skills because they naturally come out of these collaborative practices. If you're trying to solve a problem together, that's a real world application. If you get a job someday in an office, this is what you're going to be doing. A big part of your job will be solving problems. So group work, collaborative activities, very important. This is a very simple one, but I think it's quite powerful. Asking open-ended questions rather than closed questions. An open-ended question has more than one answer. A few examples. We may not always have the same answer, but it's going to be one answer. So if I ask you, what is the capital of Vietnam? What's the capital of Vietnam? Hanoi. Okay. Is that a good discussion? There's nothing to discuss. If I say, what is the most interesting city in Vietnam? Then we have a discussion. We can talk for 30 minutes about this and develop it into an activity. You have a reason to talk. The third one, also a very simple one, asking why. One of the easiest things you can do to add a little bit of critical thinking into your teaching is put the word why at the end of some of the questions. And I like to think of it as a kind of loop. This is what children often do. They might ask their parents, why? And then you give an answer and they ask, why again? That can be frustrating, but it shows a very curious mind. So my example, Romeo and Juliet. If you're familiar with the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, we know that Juliet kills herself in the play. So we might ask, why did Juliet kill herself? And there's a reason, because Romeo was dead. Why was Romeo dead? Because he had killed himself. You see where I'm going. Why did he kill himself? Because he thought Juliet was dead. Why did he think Juliet was dead? Because she had taken poison to make it look like she was dead. And we could go on and on and on. Why did she take the poison, etc. But this gets students thinking deeper and deeper. And the last one I have, something called playing devil's advocate. Have you heard the term devil's advocate? It's not a bad term. If I ask you this question, what is the minimum age to drive a motorbike in Vietnam, legally? When can you get a to drive a motorbike here? What is it? 18 years old? 18 years old? Oh, okay. I think it should be 12 years old. In my opinion, it should be 12 years old. Why? Very good. Because young people need to be able to get to and from their schools more easily. Now, do I believe that? Maybe, maybe not. That's not the point. The point is I'm taking the opposite or a contradictory kind of position just to make us have a little bit of a back and forth argument. So this is something as a teacher, you can take an extreme view and the students will hopefully get more involved in the discussion. Okay, I didn't really ask you if you were critical thinkers. You may or may not be. But here's some characteristics of critical thinkers so you can decide for yourself whether you are a little bit critical, very critical, or extremely. They love new experiences. They like to create. They take risks. They learn from their mistakes. They know that solving a problem is very important, even more important than the actual solution of that problem, the process. They're generally the movers and shakers in society that get things done. So hopefully we are raising a generation of more critical thinkers to lead us in the future. We want to have critical thinkers as leaders, right? Is that a good quality to have as a leader? A critical thinker? My leader in the United States, I'm not sure is so much a critical thinker. So this is something that hopefully will change in the future. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And for the both plenaries, we would like to thank you both Lucy and David. Please give him another big hand, please. And now it's time for break time. So we will have the break time over there, break time activity over there. So please just like we mentioned, enjoy the break time and enjoy our activity. And please remember, we will have 2 sessions in the morning. The young learners will be this room, and for adults, spoken production. So please, we will have 30 minutes for break time. Welcome.
Teacher, please remember to take belongings, because we will rearrange the chair after the break time, and it will be in 2 different rooms. So please take your belongings. Okay, enjoy the tea break and see you.